So, likely, this video will be titled something like genreless fiction or fiction without category. Conventionally, there are three different types of fiction: literary, mainstream, and genre. And these exist on a sort of continuum. But what happens when you have two stories which are very different from one another, but ultimately they share something in common, which is they don't fit neatly into any of those? They fit maybe into a gray area between. The New York Trilogy by Paul Auster was published in 1969. It is a story with three novellas. The first one, City of Glass, is about a retired detective fiction writer who is mistaken for an actual detective, and he is given a assignment to prevent a murder from occurring. The second story, Ghosts, is about a man named Blue who is assigned to watch a man named Black, and a man named Black who is assigned to watch a man named Blue. The third story is about a friend of a genius author who is tasked with determining whether to publish his life's work or not. The guy goes missing, he disappears, and he is tasked with determining, are you going to publish this guy's work? He ends up doing so, and this guy's work is utter genius, but he becomes kind of obsessed with this friend of his and haunted quite a bit is a good way to describe it. Now, these three novellas on their surface don't really seem like they're super related to each other. They share a setting, which is New York City, and they share the kind of element of using elements of the mystery genre, but they're definitely not mystery. And then they share some kind of themes, and that's at a surface level initial glance. Because once you get to the third novella, it becomes quite clear that these three novellas cannot exist as wholes apart from each other. They are tangentially related. And it's impossible to discuss this book without discussing the concept of meta-narration. Now, usually I am a staunch opponent of meta-narration. I find it usually to be an inauthentic, fabricated attempt by a writer to achieve a sort of meaning and value to something they've written, which is not intrinsically part of the thing that they've written. In other words, I see it as a cheap way to infuse meaning when there wasn't enough meaning there. Auster's heavy use of meta-narration, however, is not like that. And I was pleasantly surprised. He is not particularly concerned with expressing a sense of cleverness. He is more concerned with using the idea of meta-narration to achieve a thematic element in the story. This story is about finding a sense of identity and about finding a sense of meaning. And if you look up this story on Google, what you'll find is that it calls it postmodernist. And looking at this book through that lens, modernity is kind of about, I guess, brute efficiency and this kind of unending quest for progress. Postmodernity then asks kind of, what's next? What is the meaning that we try to make out of this now that we don't really have a sense of feeling innate purpose? And this story's themes reflect those ideas. Auster asks his characters, and he asks the audience to examine their lives and to hold up a mirror to their lives and ask, is this meaningful? Or is it all just this desperate clawing after a sense of meaning? And the meta-narration is a very loud way of Auster telling his audience that this book is, in essence, about self-awareness. I do not think that he believes that life is meaningless. I do, however, believe that he thinks that life, to uncover a meaning in your own life, you first have to have the self-awareness that this postmodern existence is meaningless of its own accord, and that you have to make the meaning for yourself. And I think meta-narration is a very loud way of him talking about that sense of self-awareness. Now, meta-narration is not the only technique that Auster makes use of. In the second novella, Ghosts, he uses the idea of abstraction. The character names are blue, black, white, green, they're colors. And the sense that you get from that is that these people are general extractions of characters or the kind of postmodern crisis. And the fact that that story is squeezed in between two stories where the characters are named gives you the sense as a reader that this is a kind of diluted version of the themes of the other two stories. It is the most kind of obvious version of those themes, and then once you look at the other two stories using that lens, you kind of uncover the genius of Auster's theming here. The second tool that he uses is a uncanny sense of deja vu. Character names which come up again and again, but in slightly different context. The structures of the stories are about a man who is having a crisis of some sort in his own life, and he attempts to, in this desperate way, attempts to create meaning in his own life. And that is not immediately apparent. Auster is very subtle with it, but it becomes clear by the third novella that that is what you are experiencing. And so what you get is this very uncanny sense of deja vu. And in contrast to the meta-narration, In contrast to the meta-narration, this uncanny sense of deja vu is very much a soft touch. It's very quiet. It's very subtle. And so you have these two things which are operating together. One is very subtle, one is very loud, about the self-awareness and uncanniness of the crisis of postmodern existence. One more thing that I'd like to discuss and talk about is that Auster very clearly has an appreciation for literature, and I think on the surface level, he is saying that literature provides a sense of meaning to postmodern existence. But I think that's surface level. But I think it's still there. But he, in the first story, in City of Glass, he talks a great deal about Don Quixote. In the second story, Ghost, he talks a great deal about Walden by Thoreau. And in the third story, the main kind of literary or piece of literature on display in the third story is the published work of the character in the story. And I'm going to focus on Don Quixote in the City of Glass because it left the biggest impression on me, partially because I've actually read it. I haven't read Walden before. But Don Quixote is about a man who self-deludes himself, or self-deludes into believing that he is a character in one of the kind of chivalric romances that he reads a great deal of. The City of Glass is about a man who self-deludes into believing that he is a detective or a character in the stories that he talks about. And that usage of other stories to explore his themes is opened up just kind of a new realm of the story to me, a new layer of it. And also, now I want to go back and reread Don Quixote, because I had never really thought of Don Quixote in the way that it is described in this story. So I kind of have a big thank you to Paul Auster for that. But all in all, what Paul Auster accomplished here was genius. This is a masterpiece. It is almost like a respectful evolution of the mystery genre. Whereas the mystery genre is looking at something tangible, like solving a murder or solving a theft. Paul Auster's mystery is solving the crisis of modern existence itself, or seeking to provide an answer to it. All in all, this is the most exact and precise execution of a author's vision that I have seen in a very long time. This is an excellent work, and I am going to happily give it a 9 out of 10. The second book is All the Birds in the Sky by Charlie Jane Anders. And though this book and the New York Trilogy are very different, they do have one thing in common. Though All the Birds in the Sky has elements of fantasy, elements of science fiction, and elements of surrealist literature, in it, it is truly none of those things. And so, hence its unlikely association. With the New York Trilogy. This book is a short thing. It is about it follows two children in the first half, and it follows them as adults in the second half. And these two children, Patricia and Lawrence, are two very lonely individuals. And they very much do not belong, and they suffer a lot of abuse at the hands of their parents because of how much they do not belong. And the first half of the story is written using this kind of surrealist methodology. It's unclear whether stuff is truly real or not. The second half, when they're adults and when they're dealing with kind of the repressed trauma of childhood, is not written using that surrealist bent. It kind of reminded me in the first half of like Wind Up Bird Chronicle by Murakami. But in the second half, it doesn't have that bent. And because of that, it feels a little more like an action-y sci-fi thing. It feels a little bit more like it has a genre of its own. And I think that is to its overall detriment, and I think that the first half is the stronger half of the narrative. But the exploration of abuse and the sense of not belonging is kind of what's occurring on the microcosmic scale. On the macrocosmic scale, thematically, we are following an exploration of the difference between a technological viewpoint bias in the world versus a naturalist viewpoint bias in the world. Kind of which one will save the world, and in which one will, fight against the other one in saving the world. And Anders' point is that, quite truly, that these two things, technology and nature, complement each other, and that we tend to think of them as opposites rather than complements to one another. The prose voice here is very strong. Anders has this ability to weave together a humorous style with a sense of kind of razor edge and societal commentary that you would think of would be accompanying science fiction. And the prose themselves do not really take themselves that seriously. And at the same time, they have the ability to be serious. And the transitions are seamless. And I've seen other authors struggle with that, the transition between kind of not taking yourself too seriously and knowing the exact moments where you should be serious in the story. And Anders has a very good feel of that. Some other issues that I have with it is that there is this kind of cataclysmic weather event that results in the climax of the story occurring. And that feels very much like it comes out of nowhere. It felt like Anders just wanted the climax. Anders just wanted the climax to happen rather than it earning its place to happen. And that doesn't feel very good narratively. And the second issue I have with it is that there is one character, Mr. Rose, who I kind of interpreted as representing kind of a childhood phantom, where you have these adults in your life who kind of force you to conform when you're very different, and he kind of represents that. He's this assassin of dubious origins, and he's never really explained. He kind of has this role to play in the first half, and in the second half he kind of has less of a role to play, and I found that to be unfortunate, and I kind of wanted more of him in the second half. All in all, though, in the preface of Wind Up Bird, Murakami says that he feels like he wrote something that nobody else could have written, and that is the hallmark of a truly great artist, is that you have done something that nobody else can truly replicate. And I think Anders did that here. I truly do. I think this story could not have been written by anyone other than Charlie Jane Anders. And for that reason, I think it is a masterpiece. And I'm going to give it a solid 8 out of 10. It is a very short, very fun read. Alrighty. See ya.